Welcome to SportsLit and a conversation with Richard Zokol. His book, Zokology, Change Your Perspective, Not Your Swing, is published by ECW Press. Release date, May 19th. I'm Neil Acharya. It's an easy question to ask to someone who releases their life story. Why now? For Canadian golfer Richard Zokol, the climate of the publishing industry is perfect. It's not really enough just to tell people about your life. They can get a summation of that online very easily. There has to be a hook to sell the book. A good example is Doug MacLean's Draft Day, which he wrote with Scott Morrison. In it, he shares the story and also his expertise in hockey management as a way to give the reader an edge in the professional sphere of building and leading resilient organizations. Season 7, Episode 6, by the way. As part of this biographical shift in the industry, Zokol, who spent 22 years as a pro golfer, shares ideas about mindset, a first-person account of dealing with the mental side of the most frustrating sport on earth to master. It also times out nicely with his development and founding of the MindTrack system. MindTrack is a mental game training system available as a mobile app. Zokol played 22 years in the PGA from 1982 to 2001, at a time when Canadian golfers were a novelty, part of an increasingly international makeup of the tour. Zokol was part of a generation of Canadian golfers born in the 1950s that were contemporaries to the likes of Greg Norman, Ben Crenshaw, and Curtis Strange. Not starring on the circuit like those aforementioned names, but making a consistent living out of the game. In the early days of TSN, Sports Desk golf highlights would be followed by a full-screen graphic with the leaderboard. Below it, you would see in bold yellow letters, Zokol, Dave Barr, Jim Nelford, and a little Canadian flag beside the font. Zokol's career was defined by the resilience of fighting his hyperactive mind while fighting to stay on tour. One of the things he tried early on was to use a Sony Walkman. He found it helped him. It also earned him the nickname Disco Dick, even though he was listening to classic rock. He would soon abandon the Walkman, but never give up trying to figure out how to play at his best by mastering his mind. And that's a big part of what we're going to discuss today, but it's not the only thing. Zokol discusses his upbringing in Vancouver, how he came to golf, and the game as it stands. He won 2 PGA events and teed off in 412 tour events. He is the first ever golfer to join the program as well. Zokol makes his home in Kelowna, BC, where he joined me in a conversation online. You can purchase Zokology and any of the books we've covered over 10 seasons at sportslit.ca. Welcome to Season 10. And we'd like to welcome in Richard Zokol. Richard, thank you for taking the time today to talk about your book.
Well, Neil, it's nice to meet you, and I'm more than happy to talk about my book and the stories and trials and tribulations of being a professional golfer, learning how to survive. But so thank you for having me on. Appreciate that.
No problem at all. I think this probably is the first golf book we've done. And what I kind of got from it overall was just how hard it is. I mean, the casual sports fan, let's say, watches the 4 major North American sports: hockey, football, baseball, basketball. I don't know if they have an appreciation for how hard it is to just stay on the tour. You were on tour for 22 seasons. You won 2 events, 412 PGA events in your career. How hard is it just to maintain that level of being on tour, let alone winning?
Well, yeah, it's surviving, putting food on the table, all those things. You know, golf is a very intense game, and it's more of a mental game than it is a physical game, even though, I mean, you need your physical ability of the best players in the world are a real strong advantage. But anyone who plays golf seriously, they typically struggle with performance anxiety and you know, our mind is the most important piece of equipment we'll ever have in the game of golf, but no one teaches how to use the mind properly. So when people are left to their own devices on trying to figure out how to play, I want to hit this shot, I don't want to embarrass myself, I need to make that putt or hit a good shot here, so I don't, so it triggers fear and fight and flight and threatening situations. That is, so as I mentioned, if you haven't figured out how to, have a healthy way to improve your thinking, you're going to be in for a rough ride. And then there's things like called the yips that you get, and people start to attach their personal identity to the level of score they play, which is really unhealthy. And then things tend to snowball, and quite frankly, they parallel life as well in many ways.
So for yourself, just to maintain, to last that long, I mean, you had to overcome a lot in yourself. I mean, it was the headphones and the disco dick era, and then it's expanded and it's moved into the mind track system, which I want to get into briefly, in a minute. But do you think the average person out there knows how hard it is to just maintain a level of play to stay on tour?
No chance at all do they understand that. There's, most people that play golf, they can play it leisurely, they might play it seriously, might gamble a little bit. But if you do it for a living and you miss a cut, you have all these expenses, your caddy, your travel, your hotel, your family traveling with you if they're traveling with you. And then if you miss the cut, you make nothing, and you're about $6,000 in the hole for that week's expenses. So you very quickly get either washed out of the PGA Tour because you can't handle it, or you figure things out. In my rookie year is when I got labeled Disco Dick. I was, I had a Cinderella story, getting onto Brigham Young University, winning the Canadian Amateur, getting my PGA Tour card. Then I got onto the PGA Tour, and the nightmare began. For 6 months on the PGA Tour, I couldn't make a cut, and I was putting pressure on myself, saying, you've got to do this, and you've got to do that, you have to shoot a better score. And it was just making matters worse. And until I got to a point where I said, well, listen to music between the shots on this Walkman, and it may calm you down. And the first day I did it, and I'm listening to Led Zeppelin and all these wonderful rock songs between the shots. By shots, I shoot 65, and I'm leading the golf tournament after the first round, the second round, the third round, all the way till 4 holes to go. So that told me right then and there that I better dive into the psychology of this game and get my head wrapped around properly, because no one ever taught me. The industry doesn't teach how to use your mind properly. And the whole purpose of Zokology is the wordiness to, of my way of thinking and what I discovered, because I've gone through many, many failures before I was able to get through some of those successes on the PGA Tour, like winning on the PGA Tour.
So in a way, I mean, this book would be better for the average golfer. And I know that the mind track system is designed for top flight golfers too, but it'd be more relatable to the average golfer than, let's say, if like Tiger Woods wrote a book, I'm imagining, right?
Yeah.
So I've noticed a lot in this podcast has been around for 10 years, and I'd say in the last 5 years I've noticed that a book has to have some sort of hook to it to kind of get out there, as opposed to your life story. So this kind of was the perfect fit for you too, right? Because the mind track system,
that's right,
ties into, you can tell your life story and talk about this mental aspect, and this mind track golf system. Before I ask you the simple question of what mind track golf is, I would love for you to just read a little bit from your book.
Okay.
Kind of like a light bulb moment for you, or just a moment in your career where you it led from the headphones to moving into mind track golf.
Well, yeah, I can talk about, the aha moment using mind track golf was at the 2000 U.S. Open at Pebble Beach in the final round, where I shot a record. I shot 30 on the front 9. But let me read to you if I can my skills on excerpt from the book. Mm-hmm. I stayed here. Over the past year, I tried to will myself into this present moment in competition, but I found my conditioned response was so ingrained that when I was in those intense situations, I defaulted back to my conditioned response. I needed a system that would help me recondition myself out of my dysfunctional mindset. It became very clear that if I carried thoughts from the past or had thoughts that projected into the future to possible results or feared the possibility of a bad outcome, it would instantly pull me out of this present moment and disrupt my ability to assess and execute my shot. The light bulb came on as my ball was in flight immediately after executing a perfect 7-iron from the fairway to a well-bunkered green. I loved the shot I just struck. I could not have struck it any better. As the shot peaked to its apex, my immediate thought was this could go in the hole, or at least it's going to be really close. In that moment, if I were given an option to take it over, I would not have taken the option. In the next moment, as my ball touched down, I didn't cover the distance of the lip of the front bunker. My shot came up a couple feet short and plugged underneath the lip of the bunker. A moment later, that resulted in anger, my conditioned response. I said to myself, fuck, I just executed my most perfect shot and now I'm buried under the lip of the bunker. As it turned out, I knew the execution of that shot, a key factor, was excellent. But my assessment of the shot, another key factor, was unsatisfactory by my own standards. My discovery, it's not good enough to make an excellent execution if the shot's assessment was unsatisfactory. I didn't get it up and down from the plug lie and I made a bogey. Both the shot's assessment and the shot's execution is critical. So I declared them key performance markers, KPMs. With my new perspective, I started to put my full attention on evaluating both KPMs for each shot. It became my new performance measurement system. It not only simplified my process, but it immediately freed me up, allowing me to access this present moment. I felt an uncoupling from the results and from performance anxiety of the shot.
Yes, there's a kind of like a direct moment. Is that when is that kind of the genesis of Mind Track?
Well, it was the start of it. So I was in that situation, and if you listen to PGA Tour players talk about, they talk about, I have to execute, I've got a process, and I have to execute this shot. And this was the moment when I found out that execution of the shot is only 50% of the deal. The other 50%, which makes it 100%, is the assessment of the shot. And so that's when it dawned on me. But the real aha moment was when I started in 2000. I'm 43, 44, and I'm trying to get back onto the PGA Tour. And this system, which is called Mind Track, that identifies these two key performance markers, and then the score is a byproduct of that. I started so after every round and every week by week, I was getting better at this, and I was focusing and writing down my key performance markers on how well I assess these shots. And I started getting really good at this, Neil. I could feel the weight on my shoulders starting to alleviate. And I became ingrained to just assess and execute. It was so simple. And then I got to the US Open at Pebble Beach in 2000. And this is where the aha moment happened. I made the cut and shot a poor round in the third round. A shot in 80. But in that final round on Sunday, where Tiger won by 15, I went out there, I said, look at this. It's Pebble Beach. It's a beautiful day. Tiger's doing his thing. Just go out there and just let it go. So all I did was focus on my assessments and executions. Didn't even care what I shot. So I go through the front nine. I shoot 30 on the front nine, which is a US Open record for Sundays at Pebble Beach. And my caddy says to me, going down the 10th fairway, and by the way, Scotty Bowman was there giving me the pumps up, which was so delightful. So I'm walking down the 10th fairway. My caddy says to me, he says, do you know what you shot? And I went, no, I don't know what I shot. And he goes, you shot 30. So there in itself is kind of a disruptor. But where the aha moment is that didn't bother me at all. He said, I don't know what I shot. I thought about the 30. I didn't care what I shot. And I said, I still don't care. All I care about is executing and assessing my KPMs. And that was the aha moment when so over the past 3 months of this process that is called Mind Track Golf, it is now going to be an app. That was that allowed me to recondition my perspective on stopping being emotionally attached to the result. And then it's because that's where the pressure lies. We put pressure on ourselves when we're motivated by extrinsic things like money. What is this going to mean to me? Can I buy a mansion? Can I get a Ferrari? All these extrinsic motivation results that are just useless. You've got to pull your emotional attachment to your intrinsic motivation and results, which are your key performance markers, your assessment, your execution. So when you condition yourself to do this, you get free and emotionally, you let the incarceration of this emotions let go, and you're able to optimize your performance. It's just that simple.
And so is MindTrack Golf the system? For people that don't know about it, it's an app.
So we had it built in 2000 prior to the pandemic. And we're launching 2.0 right now. AI is building the product. So it's an app, and you use it after every round or during the round, depending on and it really applies to serious golfers. If you're serious about golf, this is this thing because you're probably down the rabbit hole. Doesn't matter how good you are or how poor you are. It's just if you're stuck in this mindset, and which most people are, and you enter your key performance markers on every shot after the round in an after action report. And then the system on the back end, it delivers these reports to where you're losing most of your hemorrhaging shots away. And you go, instead of, your shots will determine that as well. But you want to be able to find out the detail of is it your execution or assessments that's causing you to lose or hemorrhage these shots away on the golf course. And these reports go to you, and they go to everyone else you have on the share list, like your golf coach, like your fitness trainer, anyone on your team, your caddy, all these things. And then this is the condition response that it teaches you to learn to detach emotionally so you can find your freedom and optimize your performance.
And so as it stands right now, it's helped, you listed in your book, it's helped several golfers, right, to get to a higher level. Can you expand on that?
Sure. So let's look at last year, 2005, before the Masters. Rory McIlroy and Scottie Scheffler, the two best players in the world. Where you're looking at Rory McIlroy, who had a 6-shot lead, and he blew it 3 times, and before he finally won it, he double bogeyed the first hole. So you're watching a guy, and we were watching him and being emotionally attached to him going through these horrible shots, and we're going, oh no, not again. He's blown it again. He blew it 3 times before he inevitably won it. So he's going through emotional turmoil. We're going through it with him. But then you go get a guy like Scottie Scheffler, who's in a completely different ecosystem than Rory McIlroy. He doesn't have the and what I mean by that is he never gets ahead of himself. He never looks back to past traumatic experiences that he's had, and we've all had them. But he doesn't allow, when he's doing interviews, people are asking him, do you think your expectations? He goes, I don't think any of that stuff. That gives me brain damage. So here's a guy who automatically, because of his ecosystem, it's probably because of his upbringing, that he's such a wonderful person. He treats people the same way. His personal identity isn't wrapped up of him being a champion. He's just another person. And you're going, wow, this guy's really got his head on straight. And I think it's just by his ecosystem. He didn't train himself. But when you look at most of us don't do that. Most of us go, oh, I want this putt. And then when you get embarrassed, you're in these threatening situations, you jump into fight, flight, or freeze response, and you're in trouble. And then your personal identity I fell into that in the book. In 1994, I didn't want to lose. My ego wanted to be on the PGA Tour when I had lost my privileges because I played so poorly. I thought my way off the PGA Tour. That's how, and most people are like that. So I'm offering a solution for people to have a more mental health perspective. And hence, that's why the title Zokology. And we want you to change your perspective rather than your golf swing.
And what does separate let's say, Rory McIlroy from somebody that's got to repeatedly go to Q school? And still elite, but not like what separates them aside from skill? What separates them mentally?
Well, their belief system and how they did it. Like, so we've watched Rory McIlroy struggle for 14 years because, or 12 years ago, he was trying to get that Masters win. He had the big lead with 9 holes to go, and he blew it. He lost that 6 shot, and he did not get the career Grand Slam. So he had call that post-traumatic stress disorder. So every time thereafter he was in those positions, he couldn't win a major. He blew the 2022 U.S. Open, the 2023 Open Championship, and the U.S. Open at Pinehurst. And he had it in his hands, but you could tell that he didn't have the wherewithal, mental approach, stability to get through those until he did it in the Masters in 2025. And then even this year we watched him win, but he still was struggling. He still was struggling. So he's making progress, but he's so physically talented. Most of the people on the PGA, he separates himself from most of the people on the PGA Tour with his driver. He lives and dies by the driver. We watched it on the this year's Masters, and it's great to watch. But more than any other sport,
yes,
the psychological perspective of golf, like life, determines what level of happiness we have.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And, I was going to ask you about this a little later, but I'll bring it up a bit. Like just the philosophy behind, you look at baseball and you look like a great baseball player is if 70% of the time as a hitter is going to fail. But I don't feel like the same philosophy applies. Like, I don't think there's books out there about inner baseball, but golf, the psychological component of golf is just on a greater level. And you mentioned some of the books that helped you over the years. Homer Kelly, Wayne Dyer, Bob Rotella, if I'm pronouncing his name right, are some of these authors. Could you, because this is a podcast about sports books, could you kind of share some of the books that maybe helped you get to the point where you could write a book?
Sure. Yeah. Tony Robbins' Awaken the Giant Within was huge for me at the time. When he talked about how important and getting good at making decisions, we make 1,000 decisions a day. But if you get healthy at them, Eckhart Tolle's book, who lives in Vancouver, you read the book. I met him, and I know his publishers personally, type of thing. And when I read it really solidified the things that enabled Mindtrack to become a real entity. And all self-help books, there's just so many of them that I read, and then work with sports psychologists as well, because everyone's saying the same thing. You've got to get yourself in that present moment.
Right.
You can access the present moment by shooting heroin. That'll put you in the moment, but you want to access the present moment by something that healthy as well.
Yes.
So that doesn't take you down like booze or other addictions type of thing, and those are the things, and we have to learn this in life. And it took me literally over 20 years to figure things out, and still because no one's really moving in on the psychological side of the game. There's so much to learn in the psychology of golf and the psychology of life as well.
Well, on that note, has this helped you and can it help others in life? I mean, it's KPMs and all this. You can attach it to what you do on the links on the course. What about in life? Do you feel like there's
absolutely.
Talk about you specifically. Have you found it translating into just other aspects of your life?
Sure, and I think there's some parallels, and a lot of people do make parallels, life and golf type of thing. I'm an expert in golf, not in life. I'm not a psychologist,
right?
But I think the parallels are there. So let's an example. Let's say we win a lottery and make a lot of money, and because of my wealth, I take on these habits that I'm a better person than you because I have more money than you and I drive a better car, that type of thing. Those extrinsic results are the same, they will build a personal identity that's going to collapse. One way or another, it will collapse. So when Scotty Scheffler is the perfect model on that, as I mentioned. So he doesn't take it seriously. He goes, look, I'm playing a game for a living, for Christ's sake. And I make a lot of money at it, and I appreciate that. But that's not who I am. I just happen to be a good golfer. And some days I win, and some days I lose. I don't take it personally. And I think those things are very, very important, because those people, like if you're a rock star and you're sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and if you think your world is way better than someone else's, or you're above someone else, boy, you're going to be into a rude awakening. And I think there's lots of examples of bad ending up experiences in the rock world.
Yes, and it's interesting because your perspective is very grounded. I would like to say very Canadian in a way, but very grounded. I mean, golf, I don't think from the outside people look at, I mean, I think they would see golf as an elite sport. You know, the idea of even being a member of a golf club means that you're better than somebody. You know what I mean? So how is your perspective shape? Like, how does it fit into that world? I mean, maybe I'm completely wrong, but I do think there is some credence to the idea that, you know, golf, becoming a member of a private club, it's an elite kind of way of playing a sport.
Sure. Yeah, there's no doubt. But again, you know, if you are a person that thinks you're better than someone else because of your balance in your bank, then you are really a mistaken person. And you will, you know, like, you know, the depression that I went through, trying to, you know, the first year on tour, I didn't think I belonged, and had bad negative thoughts. And it wasn't until I started reading some books and I went, you know what, that's me. I'm making these mistakes. And then, you know, learning that your thoughts, you can change the channel. You know, Tony Robbins really made that big impact in his book, Awaken the Giant Within. And it enabled me, I bought into it, it enabled me to really get through some valleys and hit those aha moments.
So the mindset I'm old enough to remember, like, when you would watch TSN in the 80s and you would watch the golf leaderboard come up, and there'd always be a little Canadian flag at the bottom next to Dave Barr or Richard Zokol, wherever they played. I wanted to know, what was the mindset of, you know, I would consider, I think in my research, I've seen Dave Barr's older than you by 8 years, but like, you're both on tour, you overlapped. I mean, what was the mindset of Canadians on the PGA Tour in the 80s and 90s? I'd say any time before Mike Weir kind of won the Masters. What was the expectation? Did you feel like you were alone on an island?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my first, you know, Dave Barr, Dan Halderson, Jim Nelford, myself were you know, George Newton was in the 60s. We were in the 70s and 80s. And 90s. And every Canadian newspaper would bold the scores of the Canadians to stand out. And, you know, and the four or five of us were representing Canada, so to speak. And it's great to represent Canada when you play, but when you're playing poorly, it's very difficult. You know, and then, you know, and it took me various steps to learn to get comfortable, to get into contention, feel comfortable to perform well. And in that time when I had the lead of the Canadian Open, going into the final round with Curtis Strange, I tell in the book, I had not won yet. And to me, Curtis Strange was a killer. He was the #1 player in the world. And he was hardened, and his mettle was strong, and he knew how to do it. And I'm standing on the first tee, and I'm thinking to myself, I know he's going to win. He knows he's going to win, and he knows that I know he's going to win. And I had to learn to. And so when I teed off, I had the nation on top of my shoulders. I was not prepared to deal with that yet. So I didn't play poorly, but I didn't play great. I shot 75. Curtis went on to win, but it was a wonderful learning experience, the baptismal of fire by being in that situation. And learning, and then I came away with it, licked my wounds, moved on, and then started to shore up some of those weak points where it didn't allow me to play. And I got to a point where I felt like I deserve to win. This is going to be mine. No one's getting in my way, and I'm kicking the bloody door down, and this is my victory. No one's going to take it away from me. I love that mindset.
It's interesting too, because I read in one of the kind of like the endorsements of your book, I forget which golfer it was, but they talked about how you guys came in at a time when the tour was changing too, and there was a lot more European players coming in.
Yeah.
Can you describe?
Brad Faxon said that. Brad Faxon.
There you go. Can you describe kind of the atmosphere? What was going on with golf at that time when there's people from Europe and other countries kind of trying to establish themselves on tour?
Yeah. So kind of, if you weren't a Canadian, you were a foreigner. Whether you came from Canada or whether you came from Europe. So there was a tendency to kind of, like, we'd play in the Dunhill Cup and the World Cup Championships, and you get to know guys from particularly other European guys. And then, and then when you went down to the PGA Tour, it's a very American thing. And the good thing about that is your golf clubs did the speaking. It didn't matter, what country you were from. If you're given the opportunity, everyone tees it up at zero, and whoever shoots the lowest score on Sunday wins the money, and it's a lot of it. So, but we bonded together. Dan Halderson and I were very close. He died at a very young age. Dave Barr. We played a lot of practice rounds together, and we represented Canada for all our time on the PGA Tour. And the Americans they'd come up to Canada, and besides kind of wondering why there's so many donut shops on every corner, that type of thing. But they wondered, wow, these Canadian media guys are pretty hard on you guys. They expect you to win when there's only 4 of us against, 152 other people in the field every week. So, but it was something you had to just deal with and accept and be part of your learning process.
Where are we now when it comes to Canadian golf? You think of Mike Weir's, turning point there in 2003, and then Brooke Henderson's pretty consistent on the women's side. Do we need a major? Is it due time? I'm thinking they say 25 years is a generation. Yes,
we do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think my eras, if you can, our 1980s and 90s era, Dave Barr, Halderson, Jim Nelford, myself. That inspired a guy like Mike Weir to come on, and he went to Brigham Young University the same way Nelford and I went there. But he broke through that next level, winning the Masters in 2003, and that's really having a positive impact to today's players. Taylor Pendrith, Nick Taylor, Corey Connors. But it's time that these guys, they've won. They've got to. I'd like to see Corey Connors grab more courage, or seemingly build more courage and go get it, kick that door down, rather than politely knocking on the door and saying, hey, can you open the door? Kick the door off its bloody hinges. He's good enough to do that. Right. And we watched Nick Taylor win the Canadian Open, so that question's gone away after 6 decades, thank goodness. But I think we are ready, and it wouldn't be surprising if Corey Connors comes out and wins a major championship, or Nick Taylor wins a major championship. But it's time we do.
And can you speak to the LPGA and Brooke Henderson's game and what you think of that?
Yeah, Brooke Henderson is one of the most remarkable athletes that Canada has ever produced. She has a very unorthodox swing, a very athletic. But my concern with Brooke right now is that, and she's been out there since she was 18 years old. She was turning pro at 17.
Right.
I get the sense she's shy. I get the sense she doesn't like the media. She doesn't like the attention. So I'm a bit concerned with Brooke Henderson, because her talent is off the charts good. She should be dominating. She hasn't been playing well. And her sister is no longer working with her on as a caddy, so things have been disrupted. I think I don't know what's going on around the family, but I think she's distracted, and who knows, she might retire soon because she may want a family. That's a bridge that happens often with the LPGA Tour. But I hope she. First and foremost, I hope she's happy. That's the most important thing, because if you're playing golf and out on the tour and you don't want to be there, it's a miserable damn place.
Well, that leads me in two different directions here, but we'll get to both of them. But I will ask you what I wanted to ask you originally, which was, Rod Black will be my next guest, the former commentator.
Yep. Say hi to Rod for me.
I will. He writes a lot about golf and talks about Mike Weir. And what I found interesting was just, he talked about golfing with Mike Weir or being involved at a tournament with Wayne Gretzky in 1997 before Mike Weir he was just, I think, he'd won a Canadian amateur or title or something, and he was giving instruction, and just the idea of how he's, to make a long story short, He wasn't known. None of the rich guys wanted to get a lesson with him. And then Gretzky sat with him at the banquet or whatever you have after. And then all of a sudden, he got a sponsor. And he got people that would, because he's associated with Perspe, these people with big bank, then said, okay, let me fund this guy's pursuit. And I don't know if a lot of people know out there how the idea that you need a backer. It's like making a movie. You know, you need
That's
somebody.
right.
It's not necessarily like, let's say in hockey, your parents are your backer, but it's different in golf, right? You need like somebody who has a ton of money to allow you to go on tour. You know about that. You write all about it. But can you explain to the average person what I'm trying to explain right now?
Well, we call that, you know, there's two types of sponsors. One sponsor that, like, you know, RBC pays you money to wear their logo on your sleeve. That's
Right.
one type of sponsor. The other type of sponsor, back in my day, is you knew that you were going to spend a lot of money, but you didn't have the money. You couldn't afford to cover your costs. So you look for a person or a group of people, a syndication that would put some money in the dough and cover your costs. And then in that agreement, they would get a share of your money and hopefully make some money, that type of thing. And
Right.
and back in the day, you had to go find a sponsor if you weren't independently wealthy. And that was a very difficult aspect. And Mike struggled with it. I got through that position fine. I tell it in the book, where after I left my sponsor after 2 years and took on the responsibility on my own. But yeah, you need to do that. Now, if you're qualifying on the PGA Tour, in order to, there's a solution to that. So the PGA, say you're on the PGA Tour and you don't have a sponsor. The PGA Tour will automatically put in $500,000 in your account.
Oh, wow. Okay.
To go against you. So that's what they do today. And they didn't do this until Liv came around, and then everything went through the roof. So now, what will happen? You go off and you in your first tournament you win $250,000. Then they'll take that off the deposit up to 50, and then they get you going that way. So it's a lovely solution, because there are some horror stories back in the day, playing broke. And you're maxing your score, your credit card out, and you're deep in the hole. And Lee Trevino talks about this pressure constantly of, you know, true pressure is not putting for $1 million. True pressure is putting for $500 when you got no money in your pocket.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because we talk about, you know, Live is such a interesting thing and it's controversial. But I mean, whenever there's more money, things can get better, right? I mean,
They do
like
competition.
the WHA and the NHL made players richer, right? So,
Sure.
And Tiger Woods, as you write, made people richer.
Yes, he did.
So it's interesting. Oh, I didn't know that. So that's very interesting. You talked about happiness. You said you hope Brooke's happy. Let's talk about Tiger Woods right now for a second. Like, what? Give me your take on this guy. I mean, from what my understanding is, it's okay. Tiger was great, and then he kind of had the controversy about what was going on in his personal life, and then it kind of got framed as he had all these injuries. He gets the Presidential the Medal of Freedom, but seems to be back. Did we mask what was going on earlier with kind of his comeback story?
Well, you know, Tiger Woods is a very private person. That's why he doesn't hire a driver. You know, he's got $1 billion, and people go, well, he needs to hire a driver. He doesn't want a driver. The reason why he doesn't want a driver is because he doesn't want anyone looking over his shoulders. So, Tiger Woods is remarkable, and you know, he's gone through 7 back surgeries. And I talked on my podcast this morning. We discussed about it. You know, he had situations with driving while being intoxicated. You know, the 7-iron through the windshield by his wife in 2009. There was that incident. Then in a couple 3 years ago, his crash and rollover in Southern California, where he had that leg damage, which he's lucky to be alive. That crash should have killed him. And then, you know, this DUI situation that's happened most recently, he's buggered off to Switzerland to who knows what he's doing. I'm, you know, speculating that he's getting his addiction if he has one. I'm speculating. I don't know. But we all hope, you know, those of us in the professional business, we're more concerned about him with his health and his happiness. Hell with golf. He doesn't need to play. He doesn't need to sit on, be the chairman of the PGA Tour policy board. He just needs to get healthy, if that's the case. addiction and substance abuse ruins a lot of people. It ruins a lot of people, through alcohol, performers, rock bands, sports people who lose their identity. And if you don't have your thoughts together, and we have the ability to make our lives as happy or as unhappy as we choose to. And you just got to find those habits and read books and learn to establish those good patterns and learn to be happy. It's free, and we just need to knock on the right door.
Is Tiger happy?
Well, he's struggling with his I don't know. I'll speculate that he's struggling with lack of disclosure. I think if you're a full disclosure person, you will have a tendency to be more happy a little easier. If you're a secretive person, there's always going to be some challenges in there. I hope Tiger finds his happiness. I don't know if he needs to or doesn't need to. I have no idea. We have no idea on that, but we're gonna find out. Or who knows? He might just disappear and not want to be part of the speculation that all of us put on him.
Fair. I mean, one of the really interesting characters and I've read Lauren Rubenstein's book about Mo Norman, and you actually were there when Mo and Tiger met the one and only time. Could you describe that interaction?
Yeah, and it was because of my golf coach, Clay Edwards, who Mo Norman introduced me to,
yes.
who in 1984, who turned around my career as a professional golfer. So it's the 2000 Canadian Open at Glen Abbey. Clay is up from Texas, and there was a delay a rain delay, and the PGA Tour is about to launch. So the concentration on the driving range and the putting green was condensed with a lot of players. And Mo's right at the end of the fence, and Tiger's on the putting green, and we're going to launch in about 10 minutes. And Clay Edwards is going, look, there's Mo Norman right there, and there's Tiger Woods right there. They're 20 feet apart, but Mo's looking at Tiger, but Tiger's got his head down, and he's focused in on his work. And Clay Edwards, in his Texas accent, he's going, I can't let this opportunity get two of the greatest people in the world of game, and they're going to miss each other in the night by pass each other. And then he said, so he finally yells out with the top of his lungs, he goes, Tiger Woods, meet Mo Norman. Mo Norman, meet Tiger Woods. And he lifts up the rope. Tiger's head pops up like this. He's looking around, identifying. He sees Mo walk towards him. They shake hands, and that's Tiger Woods. And that photo in my book, that's Tiger Woods, Mo Norman, and Clay Edwards, the one and only time Tiger and Mo have met.
And Tiger said, going back, I think it's in Lauren Rubenstein's book, I believe he said, and I don't want to misquote the second, but I think he said Mo Norman and maybe Sam Snead or
Ben Hogan are the
only two golfers to ever own their swing.
Yes.
And I'm paraphrasing on that.
Yeah.
Not a lot. I wouldn't say not a lot. I think Mo Norman is known, but describe to somebody who doesn't know who Mo Norman is, who Mo Norman was.
Mo Norman was a savant at the highest level. If you bumped into him on the street, you probably would conclude very quickly that he has some mental health challenges. Yes. And I think the savant that he was allowed him to be the great golfer that he became. He got run off, unfortunately, on the U.S. circuit when he was out there because he would do things like play the golf course backwards, hitting an iron off the tee and a driver for his second shot, type of thing. And he looked different. He'd wear turtlenecks constantly. He'd wear 3 watches, and the way he spoke, people would just conclude that he was nuts. And it was really unfair to Mo. He was a wonderful person, and he only let a few people into his world. Lauren Rubenstein being a very good friend of his, as was Clay Edwards, and I got to know him, as well, and I cherish that. But he was someone. There's someone. I think Wayne Gretzky's investing in the company that has the rights to his movie, and hopefully that's going to come out. There's a lot of speculation going on about Mo. He was never diagnosed as being, for anything. But he was a brilliant. He got lost in the game of golf, and it's a brilliant story.
And he would be able to just on his skill level, he would be able to. He had an unconventional stance, and he would be able to hit a telephone wire or something at will.
Telephone pole, yeah. There's some of those stories, and some of them are true. Some of them aren't.
Right.
But the Dan Halderson tells me the story about him traveling with Mo, and Mo had only traveled with a few guys. Dan Halderson being one. They're driving from one Canadian tour stop to the next. I don't know, Edmonton to Calgary. And Dan and Mo go in the room, and it's about 9 o'clock at night, and Mo doesn't drink alcohol, and Dan says to, and Dan liked to drink alcohol. He says, "Mo, I'm going to the bar. I'm going to have a beer with the boys." And Mo's a very literal person, so he comes out, and then about Mo goes to bed, and about 3 o'clock in the morning, Dan Halderson comes in. He stumbles in. He's half schnockered, and he takes his clothes off, jumps into bed. And he rustles around in bed. Things come to get a little silent, and then here's this voice from Mo going, "That was a long beer."
Yeah, I mean, in the book too, I think Lauren says that there was as a youngster, he got there was some kind of accident that might have happened. Yeah. So yeah, he's a really interesting character, and I do think that. I don't know if I can make this equation, and I don't want to diminish anything, but do you kind of have to be a savant to be that good at every consistently, with owning your swing?
In some ways, yeah. In some ways, a lot of people think that, in order to be a good golfer, you got to be really, really, really smart or really, really, really dumb.
Right.
And if you're stuck in the middle, and that's where you get confused and get off track and structure a personal identity that isn't healthy.
I want to ask you about just your when you grew up and where you grew up, and a big turning point in your life is when you move across the street from Marine Drive Golf Club at 10 years old. I imagine that must have been a big moment for you, and obviously it set you on the course of being a trailblazing Canadian golfer. But what do you think that meant for your dad? Because it's really interesting. You talk about your dad and how he came to golf. He found a receipt for him buying clubs in 1942 before being shipped off to World War II. What do you think? I think your dad was a dentist. What did it mean to kind of come up from Strathcona for him to get a house with your mom across from a golf?
Yeah. Well, my father, they immigrated from Slovenia, which is former Yugoslavia. My father was 9 years old. And his parents, my grandparents, had to give him up for adoption because they couldn't afford to feed him. He escaped from the orphanage and got back, and they relocated to Vancouver from Edmonton back in the early 30s. And so when he came back out of the war, World War II, and came back to Canada, the VA put him through. He got his high school equivalency, went to university, and then became a dentist. And our abiding love in our family that my father and mother passed on to us was really the glue that held everything together. Everybody has issues and challenges, but when my father said, "Look, I got caught with some drugs. I was having a little bit of a problem and going sideways, as a lot of kids do."
Yeah.
He grounded me. He said, "The only place you can go to is that golf course across the street."
Right.
Which we're going, well, what kind of punishment is that if it's a golf course? But it put me on another path. In the path. And so my father, was a very successful dentist. My older brother, he became a dentist. My sister, one of my sisters became a dentist, and my other sister, Jan, and I were not. We were kind of the black sheep of the family. So, but what was so common among all of us was our abiding love for each other. And I chose to correct my ways. Not my father didn't because of his punishment, but because I let him down. That disappointment from my father and my mother and my brothers and sisters was the thing that I had a choice. Do I want to do this? And the choice I chose was, no, I don't want to do this path. I want to go in this path, which unites our family together.
What do you think, though, you talk about the immigrant story and he grew up in Strathcona, moving next to a golf club is a kind of a status thing too, right? I mean, first of all, there's two questions here. How did he come to golf in the first place? Do you know?
Well, he started, when he bought in 1942, he was playing at public golf courses called Langara, Fraserview. So he was attracted to golf. So he paid $99, and I don't think he got addicted to golf until after he came back from the war.
Yes.
So he was, and I remember when the first golf ball I hit was, we were living on 25th and Main Street.
Yeah.
So, right in Vancouver. I'm going to General Wolf, and there's projects around there, and you either learned to fight or you got picked on. And we went to and I found these golf clubs in my grandmother's basement, and we go to Hillcrest Park and hit this golf ball, and I remember, hitting a good shot and went, wow, that feels pretty good. I like that. I liked everything about it. So down the road, when the opportunity to go golfing was, I am in. I was attracted to it right from the start, and the more I got into golf because of the individual nature of the game, that's what I really loved.
Did you having the Zokol name, did that, golf at that time when your dad moved across the street, where was golf in terms of like welcoming people, across all stripes? Was it an easy club to join? Was there any friction?
Yeah, the junior memberships were $100, and that's a lot of money back in the 70s. But it was still a good deal. If you wanted to, you could join the club as a non-member's child. A girl or a boy for $99 a year type of thing, and play all the golf you wanted. There were some restrictions in there, but it was a cost-effective way. I started out caddying, earning money caddying. And when I first started caddying, I was making $10 here to buy a nickel bag, a pot, and then it turned out to be something later on. After I got through that barrier, let's put it that way. But you can do it, and depending on if. So there's a lot of people that came. Ben Hogan came from, Lee Trevino back in those days. It was a lot more prevalent back then than it is nowadays. But yes, today playing golf is expensive. It's exclusive because of the cost, but so is hockey.
Yes.
Oh my God, the cost of hockey equipment that we seem to find funds for as Canadians is up there. But golf is the same way, and it,
You mentioned the part with Lee Trevino where he had the gun with him, right? For someone he was rooming with might have had the gun. It kind of shatters your image of and you see how far it's come. What it is now. I know I've taken a lot of your time. I'll close by asking you. Recently, actually, the announcement was made in Vancouver by Adam Van Couverden. That there's going to be $755 million invested in Canadian sport. This happened last week, across the board from, I think they call it from the playground to the podium. I want to ask if you've heard about this, but I would say, where could that money, where would it be best suited for golf? Like, do you think that golf is an Olympic sport now? Where would some funding really help in the world of golf?
Well, where I'd like to see the funding go is there's always with the onset of Mike Weir and now all the top players on the PGA Tour, they're providing an incentivification for those who have the means, people who have the wealth. What I'd like to see this money go to is get involved with the public golf courses of Vancouver, Langara, Fraserview, Macleary, and then go back to Strathcona, go back to those neighborhoods, or anyone who qualifies that has an interest in playing golf, but that does not have the financial means. I think we can polish up some real gems, that are in the rough, so to speak, and get those people by providing them the equipment and the accessibility and the competition amongst their peers as an outlet to instead of taking the drug route or the gang route, go the golf course route. I think golf teaches you so much about life that I think it would be a wonderful way to spend the money. A
couple small things before we go. what would you tell the average golfer, maybe the person that picked it up in COVID and is like hating their life because they can't hit the ball in the air? Like,
well,
can you, I'm sure, can you, give a little bit of advice basically to me?
Sure. Yeah. Basically, you'd say, look, well, first of all, you're not good enough to get mad if you're a beginner.
Yeah, I like that quote. You're not good enough to get mad. I've heard that on the golf course.
Yeah. Number two is that golf is a very difficult game, and you must have a high level of acceptance, meaning you're going to hit bad shots. You're going to hit far more bad shots than you are good shots. Are you prepared to handle that? Do you have the courage to be able to do that in front of other people? So it'll give you an opportunity to put your personal identity structure together. And if you can learn to not let any other people's thoughts of how you swing the ball hit your happiness level, you can't allow others to have your control. You need to control yourself. And the sooner you can learn that, the better you're going to be to have a healthy and happy life.
I actually kind of think, now that I'm looking at it, some of your key performance markers, mine were at the first tee at Weston, don't hit any of the cars in the parking lot. I accomplished that, and I'm actually very proud of it. And
Good.
My whole goal is just, if I can get the ball in the air, that's a win for me.
Yeah.
and
if you can put in the time, you can do it. And I've always said to everyone, if I can do it, you can do it. You just got to put in the time.
I think we should give you your flowers on the fact that 22 years, 2 wins, 412 PGA tournaments. That's very remarkable. And now you're sharing how to play better and just your story with everyone. So thank you for that. And there was one other question I had, and I think I forgot it. So it can't have mattered that much. But oh yes, what's keeping you busy? I know you read, or I read in the book that you designed some golf courses. You got your podcast. What's keeping Richard Zokol busy? So after the PGA Tour, I designed and was the founder of Sagebrush Golf and Sporting Club, now just the Sagebrush Club, which is one of the best golf courses in Canada. Very proud of it. And I have a podcast right now. It's called Tough Lies, the Golfers Podcast. And I'm restructuring Mindtrack 2.0. We're raising a little dough. We're going to build now that the app that went from costing $350,000 back in the old days, so to speak, pre-COVID, now AI can build it for $30,000 in about a week. So we're rebooting Mindtrack Golf 2.0. And we're going to, I hope, to get the business going on this and helping people improve their ability to play this game and live a happy life. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for the book. And I wish you a lot of success with it.
Thank you very much, Neil. Don't hesitate to reach out anytime.